Good morning, and welcome to the second annual Ruggero Educational Workshop Series for piano teachers and musicians. I'm Dr. Carol Ann Berry, and I coordinate the workshops here for Ruggero. This year, what a wonderful year to have a workshop series of three lectures on health and wellness for teachers. Today, we have Chip Moseley, who is the co-director and also lead therapist for Total Motion Physical Therapy in Raleigh. And he's going to be discussing and working with us today on the health of our neck, back, and shoulders. So get comfortable in your own living rooms and open space and be prepared to do some stretches and exercises and learn all about how we can be so much more healthy while we're teaching. And I look forward to talking to you on the other side. This is Chip.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. So I can take my mask off now, socially distant up here on the stage there. So, and we're thankful again for Ruggero for having us out here today. If you are in Raleigh area, and if you're seeing this as a tape, maybe if you're one of my patients as well, they're right off here off Millbrook Road and Hargrove Road for all of your piano needs. As she said, I'm the owner of Total Motion Physical Therapy here in Raleigh. I'm also one of the people who helped create something we call Total Motion Release. If you like to Google stuff, we'll talk more about that later on today. Or TMR is a technique that's now been taught all over the country. This is probably close to my 200th community workshop in general I've done over the last few years, but it's the first one I've done specifically for piano folks. So if there's any feedback you can give me later on, that would be very helpful in terms of things you like, things you didn't like as well. And of the 200 or so workshops I've also done, this is only probably my 8th one that's virtual. So I'm used to kind of having some give and take between people out in here with me. So it's kind of give me an idea. That's what I'm usually used to doing. So part of our time we're going to be doing today will be lecture. You'll see we'll obviously be teaching you some things. But I'm also going to want to do some lab time. So if you're out there and if you happen to have had some neck issues, shoulder issues, spinal issues of different type, I want you to actually get out of your chair or wherever you are out there, and we're going to do some tests. We're even going to do some treatment moments. I want to see if we can make you guys feel better before you leave today. And also talk about some postures or some other things. Now, just for my own internal sake, just for some little bit of a housekeeping, if you could actually do me a little favor, because I know some of you guys are here in Raleigh and some of you guys are not. You might even be out of state. But just to kind of help my office staff to know how many people are out there, this won't be used for spamming or emailing or contacting you. But if you could just text this number we've got on your screen right now, 919-473-3690, and just say the words like check-in or hi or any word you want. Chip, you can say tomato if you want, it's fine. Again, you don't get in on any email list for us to contact you unless you ever wanted us to for any reason. It's just to say here. As my office staff is actually just going to be putting little tally marks to see how many people, to give me an idea who are doing this live are out there right now. So once again, that's, if you just text up something real quick to 919-473-3690. Now, getting a little bit into some anatomy. So first of all, spinal anatomy. Our spine is made up of a bunch of bones that are called vertebrae. They're broken up into different sections. In my neck area, the top 7 vertebrae are called my cervical spine. We then get to the mid-back section, which actually we'll talk about in a little bit, as a cause of a lot of issues with piano folks. This is called the thoracic spine. This is made up of 12 of those bones and vertebrae with discs in between. On a skeleton, these are really easy to see because they also have ribs attaching to them as well. Once we get to the lower curve of my back, this is now called the lumbar spine. Typically, that's 5 bones. If there was 30 people in the room, there might be 1 or 2 of you who have 6 bones. That doesn't make you necessarily better or worse than the people with the 5. It just makes you kind of cool on x-ray, essentially. So that's going to be the lumbar spine. Then down in my tailbone area, we've got a couple things called, the bigger bone on top is called the sacrum, and the little tippy tip of my tailbone is something called the coccyx. So that's going to be on these. Now I've got this little tiny video here that I'll see if I can pull up here on how they kind of fit together more. So I'll see if I can pull that up on the screen. If that doesn't pull up, it's not the end of the world. So anyway, I was going to see if I could pull this up in a way that kind of shows how these bones kind of move together. So are you able to hit play on that, or is that going to come? So if you can go ahead and just hit play on yours there for a moment. There you go. Now we want to do mine too.
This video illustrates one
I'm
of
not
the
sure if
main
you'll be able to
parts
hear
of the
this guy
human
talking
body,
or not.
the
There's
spinal
I kind of
cord,
hope you can't,
or
because when he's
the
actually
vertebral
talking
column.
about the spine,
One can understand the intricacies
he
of the
mispronounces
movements
a lot
of the
things.
vertebral column
That's
by
all right,
getting
but
familiar
just
with the
kinda
joints
watch
and
them, how
bones
they move.
and the set of complex muscles which make up the spinal cord. The vertebral column in mammals is known as the backbone or the spine. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord and even supports the head. The spinal cord serves as a joint for the ribs and musculature of the back. The spine is a cord-like bony structure in the human body and other vertebrates. Human vertebral column is formed by serial arranged units called the vertebrae and are inwardly placed. This vertebral column extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. These vertebrae
A little more on that. Okay, very good. That's all I wanted on that there. So what I really wanted to show on that video, was just kind of, again, there's the discs in between the bones, and there's also the way these vertebrae sit on top of each other, that if everything is aligned properly and in its proper curves and position, we should have good relaxation of the muscles, we should be comfortable, and also too, we should have good even mobility on that. So I really wanted to kind of show that. So again, I'm not sure if the audio came across on that, but this guy mispronounced everything in there, but I thought it was a cool video, so I wanted to throw that in there. So with that, we're now thinking, what's the ideal way I should be able to, have my baseline, my movements, my postures, and things like that. What should that typically look like for someone, again, if you are a piano teacher, or for that matter, just for any of us here? So that takes us to our next slide here. So we're going to talk about, historically speaking, when we think of good posture, or let's even get more specific, when we think of good piano posture, how are we often taught to position ourselves? Well, we think of it's good to be tall. Now we can think of it as good to be tall as, again, if I had my natural curves of my spine, we'd have kind of the chest up and out, the shoulders back and down. I'm kind of nice and vertical. When we think of the arm position, we want to be relatively close if I'm playing here. So we want to be, reaching too far like so. So again, we want the shoulders nice and tall, again, historically speaking. And we want to be kind of the arms either kind of, elbow by my side, or maybe even pointed downward if you can have a chair that's tall enough on that. Equal weight on both feet, kind of stable within my butt and things along these lines. So this is the position, if I have someone who is uninjured, that they will often find is the healthiest, most comfortable resting position for them if they don't have an injury. And this is what we used to tell everyone, that no matter your problem, you need to strive to get to this position. Now, I will tell you this, we're going to throw a wrinkle on this, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, is let's put an asterisk on that. Let's say you actually did have an injury that involved your neck, your shoulder, or your spine. Depending on your problem, is that technically your best choice? Or if you're a teacher coming in here, is this going to be my best position here or over there? And I understand some of you teachers out there have gotten back to seeing some clients again. Some of you are doing this strictly virtual. So that's going to also influence that if you're sitting in front of a computer versus if you're standing up next to your person you're working with. But either way, this is what we've thought to be the best. And again, I would agree it's the best if someone has the healthy body. But it's not necessarily the best for you. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right, so thinking about, we're talking about obviously the neck, spine, and shoulder today. But let's think about, are there other parts of my body that influence how that feels? So a quick little trivia question, and you can, I know you're just out there virtually, but if you knew the answer to this, did you know how many bones are in the body? Well, there's about 206 bones in the body. And that's, some medical people know that one, but even medical people don't really know how many muscles there are sometimes in the body, because it's not an agreed upon number. But there's a lot of them. There's about somewhere between, the range is between about 500 to 650 muscles. So all of these guys are attaching again to my shoulder and spine and so forth. So this is the part when I give my lectures that I tell people, if I ever had a staff member who does these lectures a lot with me, this is the part they usually like to leave the room, because I'm about to give you kind of a grotesque little visual here, so forgive me for this one. But I want you to kind of imagine for a moment that I'm wearing a giant leotard. And again, I know that's not pleasant. I've been married 26 years to the most beautiful woman on the planet. Even she wouldn't like that visual of me in a leotard, but nonetheless, I want you to think about how these things all connect together. So this leotard would go over my face and head and down through my neck and through my shoulders and chest and down my spine and through my legs, down to my feet and so forth. Now this leotard in anatomy class, we happen to call it skin. We happen to call it connective tissue. We call it fascia. We happen to call it bones, muscles, ligaments, tendons, organs, and things along those lines. So point here is that because they all connect together, they affect each other. So let's take my arm, for example, as a little visual. If this is what my arm should normally be able to do, just even in movement and naturally, let's say I had this old injury from 20 years ago. I fell on my butt and my hip really hard in a snowstorm. And the way the body responds to injuries is it's going to tighten that part of me up to protect it. Now let's say my pain went away 20 years ago, but it's often that tight spot that hangs around for the longer term. So if I've got this tight hip down here, if this is what, again, my arm should normally be able to do, all of a sudden my shoulders are starting to look kind of restricted. Now if I do that long enough turn, again, playing piano, reaching with the client, getting the papers up here, whatever it is I do in life, if I do that long enough, I am going to create a shoulder problem. Some people have even had surgeries because of this. And then they find the surgeries and the therapy, the injections don't get them better. Why? Well, the reason for that is they never got to the heart of it. This person had a tight hip below that shoulder, for example. So just kind of think to yourself while you're out there, if you happen to have neck, shoulder, or spinal issues we're mostly focusing on today, do you also have a history of feet problems? Is that you? Headaches? Do you have any hand or wrist types of problems? I understand one of the future next classes will get kind of into some of the more fine motor things, and that's great. Do you also have a history of any hips out there? Are you a hippie? Do you have any knee issues or ankle issues too? So we're often taught in medicine to think of these guys as separate issues. Oh, I'm going to see the hip doctor in 2 weeks, then 2 weeks after that I'll see the back doctor, and 2 weeks after that I'll see the shoulder doctor. But actually, no, these guys, again, that hip, knee, and that shoulder, they're all going to be communicating to each other. And once again, I can have this old tight hip over here that can pull my spine out of whack, or mess with my neck, or cause the shoulders. We're going to get in a little more detail on that. So point is, as we go a little bit more into this, is that every part of my body can influence another part of my body as well. So if we're trying to treat all this out, we need to be able to see how all these guys connect and affect each other. But let's start talking about neck and spine specifically. So if you were to ask me to teach a lecture of all the different diagnoses that can be a spinal problem, we wouldn't be here for an hour or two like we're scheduled for now. We'd be here for days, essentially. But I'm going to kind of break down the neck and the spine problems into three big categories. We're going to kind of clump them into that. And you're going to see some trends that go along with that. So on the first category, one of the most common ones that we see is something called a disc problem, or in this case, a herniated disc. So you saw in the video a couple slides ago, there's things in between the bones. We call them our discs. Think of them kind of like a jelly donut of sorts. We've got this soft material on the inside, almost crab meaty, that's being held together by about 10 to 15 rings of another tissue in there. So as long as that material in the center stays in the center, discs are our friend. They help absorb body weight. They help us to have motion, as you saw in that video, for example. So discs are a good thing to have. We want them. The people who get fused in their spine, they lose some of those discs. There's actually problems and repercussions that come from that, for example. But if there's ever anything in my body that makes that disc material come out of the center and kind of point to a side, so most commonly we'll see it goes backward to the left or backward to the right, kind of in these directions over in here. If there's ever anything that pulls it into those angles over there, now we're going to start to hit some nerves. The outer third of a disc has nerve tissue, and if it goes far enough, it can hit the bigger nerves that can run down my leg, run down my arm, depending if we're talking about the neck or the back. So once again, is a happy disc has all these things in the middle, nice and balanced within there. Now, what are the telltale signs when we think about how can I differentiate if I have a disc problem compared to some of the other ones there? Well, if you think of it kind of like if I had a ketchup packet, let's say from McDonald's, and I didn't have the rights for McDonald's to say their name, so you can do that for no copyright material there. But let's add a ketchup packet, and I put that on the bottom on the floor there, and I step on the front of that. Well, if I step on the front of that ketchup packet, it's going to make the ketchup squirt backwards. Well, similarly, people with neck or back issues, will find they have difficulty bending forward. The neck ones don't like their head to go down, and the back people won't like to bend down there. So also too, in terms of postures, these people will struggle if they're slumping more. So if you have a slumpy sitting posture, or again, if I have a slumpy kind of a back posture. So for those of you guys spending a little more time on the computer lately, like we're talking about, maybe visual issues there, so the slumping posture, it pinches the front of that disc and makes that thing want to go backwards here. So this is kind of a quick little test moment. If you all can stand up here, or Dr. Barry, you want to come up here and join me for this part? So we're just going to do this simple little test. So again, if this is something that you happen to have a neck or back issue, you can go ahead and stand up here in front so they can see. You might have difficulty doing this. We're going to just start with the neck, just look straight down. And what you're thinking is if you have a neck disc, that might feel uncomfortable in your neck. Or if you have a bad enough one, you might have it go down your arm and then come back up. So everybody out there, test it too. And then let's also do the lower back one. So just bend straight down as well. Good, and come back up. Now, some of you guys may say when you're down there, I feel tight hamstrings in my legs or something like that. That's a little different. What you're thinking about with the disc is, do I feel back strain when I do that? Or do I have, again, a shooting nerve or something? So that's going to be one. But also, since these discs can go from side to side, you may find it's more in a corner. So as we do these tests here, I want you thinking, do any of these bother my neck or back? And also, which one's the worst test? So you did the straight down one. Now if you can go down to your left with just your head, and then we'll come back up, and we're thinking, did that feel any more crummy to me than the straight down? Then you got down to the right as well. There you go. Come back up. She grunted on that one. I don't know if that picked up on the microphone. Then also in the bending spinal one, you had the straight down, but then you can also go down to your left, kind of just reaching towards that left shoe. And again, do you feel the spine or a nerve pain on that versus tight legs? And then come back up. And then again, down to the right. Okay, good. Come back up. All right, that's all I need you for right now, Dr. Barry. I'll call you back up in a moment for the next one there. So once again, someone with a disc issue is often going to say, that wasn't just stiff in general. They would say, that bothers me. I don't like looking down. Because again, that's pushing that disc material backwards further onto those nerves. Same thing here. They won't like this, this, or that. So if you happen to notice one of those those movements made you grunt, like Dr. Barry had when she went over here that right side, for example, just make a little note if you have a pad of paper or a computer over there to the right. I don't like going down to the right on my neck or something like that. Because we're going to come back a little bit later on, because we're going to get to a lab part in a few minutes, and we're going to be trying to treat out some of these things to see if we can change it, to see if we can make that feel better. So that's going to be one category, is going to be my disc people. So now the next category up is, let's say I've got these arthritic types of presentations. So maybe I'm a little older. I'll be turning 50 this next year, myself, for example. But also too, arthritis doesn't just necessarily just natural happen because I'm older. What usually is happening is that if I have a spine that in its alignment is being pulled over here more to my left side, or being pulled over here more to that right side, these bones that we saw in that video earlier that were moving so nicely together when they were so well postured together, these bones, when they start to rub on each other, they start to create the wear and tear. They wear out the cartilage. Also, we see those discs over time start to gnarl together a little bit as well. So now we have more of an arthritic presentation. There's also other words for those of you guys who have had diagnoses out there. If you've heard you have degenerative disc or degenerative joint, if you've ever heard the word spondylosis or spondylolisthesis, or there's other types of things, again, stenosis, they're all going to kind of come out of that same category where these bones start to rub together. We get pain from the rubbing of the joints together. We also get bone spurs start to form because of that. And those bone spurs themselves can hit the nerves. So again, these type of people with more of an arthritic presentation, they're going to have a very different look in the clinic, for example. So remember how I said the disc people don't like to bend forward and they don't like to slump? Well, these arthritic people love to bend forward. They love to slump in their back. They love to do this. These are the folks, if you go to the grocery store and you see them hanging out in the golf cart, on the grocery cart, they're hanging out on that grocery cart like that, because that takes pressure off their back, and they like to be here. Because when we bend forward, it actually decompresses those bones off of each other. When we're more vertical, or we're going this way even more so, we're actually going to see that adds to that compression. So if I'm someone who has a arthritic problem, they may say, I hate to be tall, but I'm healing better if I slump over more so. They'll say, I hate to stand and walk, but if I can sit down, I almost immediately feel better. So, how can you test yourself out to know if you maybe fit this category more so? Well, we're going to do some tests that we again see things with my arthritic folks. So let you go back to your spot again. So this will be the opposite. So if the disc didn't like forward, these people don't like backwards. So if you just look up as high as you can. Now again, you're thinking, is that hard for you to do? Like she's kind of stiff in her neck. I don't know if you can see that or not. And come back. If you can turn that way so they can see that. Yeah, and do that again. So ideally right now, her head should be parallel to the ceiling. Okay, and you turn back straight again.
That's tough.
That's tough. So I don't know how good I look today, but maybe something like that. I'm not perfect, but I'm probably better than that. So again, if you're having a hard time getting there, you might have again some of the arthritic-y kind of neck. But then also you've got the left corner. So go ahead and go back to the left, like I'm up to the left over there. And you're thinking, which is my least favorite one so far, the straight back or the back left corner? You've also got your back right corner too, as well. Good.
Back left.
There you go. So making mental notes, if not written notes to yourself out there too, which one do you dislike the most? And then also in the lower back too. So make sure you keep your knees locked straight on this. Don't let it do this in just a moment. So if your knees are straight, put your hands right here. Do a straight backward bend as far as you think you can go that way. And you're thinking, am I good at that? If you can maybe turn that way again. So ideally, as she does this, we'd like to see about a 45-degree bend without jutting those knees out. So if I was measuring her with my little measuring stick, I actually brought one over here, but I may not use it. Come on back up. We might see that she's maybe half of that, for example. So there's the straight backward bend. But there's also then just my straight backward bend. There's the back left corner that goes way over here to this diagonal. And then there's also the backward right corner that goes over here to this diagonal over here. Good. Thank you. That's all I need on that. By the way, if you see it out there, there's this little metal plastic clear measuring stick I put out there. I may use that later. I can't remember where I put that down. Thank you. All right, so if you're someone, again, who has more of an arthritic presentation, you may again say, I like slumping. I like being forward, but I really struggle here, and I really struggle here. You may have a back pain. If you're bad enough, you'll have something going down your leg when you do that. If you're bad enough, you'll have something going down your arm when you do that. So again, notice there's quite the conflict between those two categories. Disc people hate bending forward and slumping. The arthritic people love to bend forward and slump. Completely opposite. And you have to adapt yourself depending on who you are, even when you're hanging out with your students, even when you're playing piano, or even just in general in life when you're doing other things. So that's going to be the first two there, is going to be those two categories. Now there is a third one, and this is going to be more so for the back category. So the neck's going to be mostly in the first two. The third one also includes something down in here where we're hitting the pelvis area. Now pelvis are these big bones here that kind of connect my thigh bone here, my femur to that, and that connects to my spine. Now pelvis has also joints, one of them in the back. You'll see on your sheet here is called the SI joint. Stands for sacroiliac joint. Sacrum, again, remember being the tailbone. Ilium being the big bone that attaches to that on the pelvis. There's also another one in my private zone called a pubic symphysis. You don't have to remember these words, but just know this is a structure that can be movable, too. I can have a fall again on my butt 20 years ago that shifted that, out of whack, for example. Now, these people here, when they get the shifted pelvis, they can still have back pain and back issues, big time. But also, too, the telltale sign for them is they do worse when they have weight on the pelvis. So what are things that add pressure to the pelvis bone? It's going to be sitting. So these people will say, the longer I sit, the more back pain I tend to have, more problems I tend to have. Also, to some degrees, also laying down at night. These may be the people who say, hey, when I get up in the morning, I'm feeling kind of crummy, or I'm having a hard time taking those first steps out of bed. These are also people, if you sit down long enough, that when you go to stand up, you can get that I'm stuck moment, kind of in between too, because again, the body's kind of been pushing on that pelvis area there. So again, telltale sign for these people is they hate sitting is going to be one thing. And often, again, rising up can be tough if you've been there long enough, or maybe laying down. But you'll also notice too that the hip area is going to look really tight when you test these people out, because literally that pelvis squishes down and tightens up all those muscles around the pelvic area, so they're going to look really stiff on this leg one here. So I won't call up the doctor for this one because she's got a skirt on, so I'll show you how to test this one out for us pants people instead with that. But notice again a little bit of contrast in posture. The arthritic people in the category before said, I love sitting and I love slouching. The pelvic people hate this. They're going to get worse then. So you may think about if you do have spinal or neck problems, do you struggle more when you sit for a while? Do you struggle more when you stand for a while, and so forth? But here's the test I want you to do for this. Is I want you to come to the front of your chair, wherever you are out there. I want you to take your left leg and kick it out straight. Now, I don't want you to allow yourself to slump or lean back on this test, but what I want you to do is, as you're doing this, I just want you to pick up your left leg, the highest you can. But as you pick that leg up there, hold it for a few seconds and even kind of measure it. Where is it on your eyeball? Am I looking down here at my foot? Is it my waist high? Is it my chest high, for example, like that? And then put it back down. And then I want you to do that one more time on your left one. So I want you thinking about, if I'm going to compare these two legs, which you're going to do in a moment, is there one leg that feels heavier, tighter, strained, spasms even perhaps? And also, how high do I go? So once again, go back to that left one more time. And again, try not to slump and lean back like here. Try to keep it tall as you do that. So there's your left leg. Now I want you to switch it and try your right one out. Let the right one go out straight. And do the exact same test. Now, by the way, even people who are relatively healthy folks will find almost always one of those should be harder than the other. So I want you asking yourself, if I had to pick this leg up for 80 hours or this one up for 80 hours, which one feels, again, the heavier, tighter, or stiffer between the two? Now, people with a healthy-looking pelvis bone, they're going to find when they pick up their foot's going to be right about the height of their shoulder right now. Whichever chair you're on, that foot's going to be right around here. So if you're out there looking at your foot down here, or down there, or down there, I had a new patient in my clinic yesterday. We're again at Total Motion here in Raleigh. I had a new patient yesterday. I said, pick up your leg, and they said, I'm doing it. I said, you hadn't even done it yet. So that's all I had. So once again, if I look stiff there, and if I struggle with things like sitting, then I might have potentially a pelvic dysfunction there. So again, some of the differentiation between the three is some of the things we look there. But testing, you don't, by the way, have to have a fancy MRI, CAT scan, X-ray. For example, I have a family of 7, so medical expenses can obviously be hefty. My wife, even a few years back, was in a water skiing accident. She hit her neck, was paralyzed below the neck for a while. She's doing great, by the way, by now. But the point is that if I had to have an MRI or CAT scan with our high deductible plan, that's like $3,000 out of pocket right off the bat there. And sometimes people immediately go get the MRIs, and you really only technically, in my mind, need those things if you think you might be surgical. If you got a big nerve pain going down that arm or that leg and you're just extremely struggling, maybe you've even tried conservative treatment, that's when the radiology is helpful, because really actually radiology is not overly beneficial on the back and neck and shoulder like you think it is. It's actually, I can learn a lot more from a simple question. So if I asked you again, do you have more pain if you're sitting for a while, standing for a while, bending a lot? Or again, I look at some of these simple tests. Can you pick your leg up? Can you go backwards? Can you go forward? I can learn a lot more from that than I actually do from a $3,000 out-of-pocket MRI, actually. So just to let you know, a little budget thing for you there as well. So let's say you just had something you saw on each of those things. Which one kind of, again, sounds kind of like you? So you might make a little note over here to the side. So again, if we did these here, do you struggle more with bending forward on either your neck or your back? Was that your worst thing? And was it in particular, again, worse to the left or the right on one of those? Was it also more of the backward bends? Maybe, again, the looking up test on the neck or the lower back looking back. Or maybe it was the back left corner. Maybe it was the back right corner you didn't like. So again, if that was your worst one, make a little note of that. Or was your ugliest test that leg raise? Again, we wish your foot was up here and you're down there. I struggle to get that left leg up or something like that. So just again, you thinking about that, you can already get an idea as to one of the problems you might have that we want to address, which we're going to do in just a second here. So now we're up to a little bit of what I call lab time. Let's see over the next several minutes here, let's see if we can actually make these things look better or feel better. So first of all, I want you to kind of take a step out and say, what was your worst test? So actually, I will have you back up here for this moment again. Now, I know I didn't ask you for HIPAA reasons or anything like that. If you're not comfortable sharing any medical history, that's fine. But if I said, have you had, even in your neck and spine, any issues historically?
I have a C5, C6 plate.
Okay, gotcha.
Right
Gotcha. And how did that come to be?
I literally had pain running down my arms and my thumb was going to sleep.
Gotcha. Now, did you have any trauma that was associated with that, or
No,
just over
it
time?
just
So
started doing it.
maybe the stuff you did,
Oh, no, and then I had surgery 10 years ago.
Gotcha. How's it been since that time?
Perfect.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, but when you did it, I went, okay, I'm hitting the plate.
It looked pretty stiff. So if
Yeah.
I said, what was your least favorite test of all the tests
That
we
was
did?
it, because I've had that surgery.
And you said it was the left corner
The
in
left is
particular.
always worse for
I
me
gotcha.
for everything.
All right, so I want you to go ahead and go there. Now, as you go there, I want you tuning into how far you've gone, but
Okay.
also what stops you. Would you say, why don't you even touch it? Is it pain right here? Is it tightness right
Here.
here? Got it. Yeah. Now, would you give that degree of tightness even a small, a moderate, or a large?
Moderate.
Okay, good. All right, that's all I need you for right now. I'll call you back up here in a moment. So what we're going to see now is we're going to see if we can change her. Yeah, so on that test. So those of you guys watching her out there too, you notice how she got to about here. And we wish she was like there, right? Because of that history she's got there. Same thing on you. Whatever your worst test was, I want you to think about what that feels like right now. What's the range of motion? What's the tightness? What's the strain? If you have a spouse can take a picture of you doing it, great. That's all good. Because now we're going to see if we can make it better. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to call a couple of what I call a 90-second treatment or a 90-second miracle moment. Now a little bit of background about this first, for example. I'll have my little boring story if you don't mind real quick before we dive into these treatments here. So I myself was a 20-year pain sufferer and my spine. I had some called sciatica running down my right leg. I had some foot issues called plantar fasciitis, knee, some vertigo, some other things in my shoulder too. And back then, nothing really ever helped me. So I became a physical therapist, but still nothing helped me. But I was blessed about 2002, hooked up with the previous owner of Total Motion. His name is Tom DeLonzo Baker. And he had a desire in mind. He said, I'd like to create a tool where patients could learn how to become their own clinician. And we played around with a lot of ideas where anatomy and physics class kind of joined together, including how everything connects together, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. And what we found out is not only a way out of our own pains, I've been very blessed to be completely symptom-free since 2004, but we also found these principles when applied to our patients. They were getting better faster and staying better longer with the newer thoughts than they were with the older thoughts. So what we're getting ready to do is a couple tricks that come out of that. Because what also happened is that previous owner of the company, he said, I love my baby of this tool we created so much. He said, so he sold the company to me and my co-owner Deanne, and he said, I'm just going to go teach this stuff. And if you ever Google total motion release, or TMR for short, you'll see literally hundreds of things pop up on the internet about us, because he's now trained a little over about 6,000 clinicians in all 50 states and international on this tool that started off in our office with a couple people trying not to hurt. But one of the principles we're thinking about is everything's about to be a science experiment. Everything gets a test and a retest. Because some things we may try with Dr. Carol Ann over here, or yourself, may work awesome. Something may not work at all. So we want to see again if that can make better. So the first step is going to be this. Everyone out there sitting on the front of your chair. And what you're going to do is you're going to sit up kind of comfortably tallish, it's like so. I want you to put your knees together and your hands right here. So what you're going to now do, you're going to do what we call the body twist test, turning to your left side. So I want you all turning this way. As far as you think you can. Even if you think you're symptom-free, do it anyway. And now while you're doing that, you're thinking, why do I stop? And how far do I get? Did I get here, here, or there? Now, me, I kind of stopped when I got to about there because I felt a nice little tension in this lower rib right here. And that's what I felt on that. Now, going back to a comment I made earlier, I said, even if people are pretty healthy, they're never going to be perfect. So there's always going to be one of these sides that's lesser good than the other. So that's what this one looked like. Now we're going to compare that to the other one. Now, in my case, I like that one a lot better. I'm freer, I go further in my range of motion on my clock, and it doesn't pinch that rib like I felt over here. Now, in the past, if we saw someone who was really stiff in a spot like here, and we knew we wanted that better, we would say, let's do what? Let's go stretch that out. Let's go pull it into that tight spot, for example. But let's think of it here, because what I find is in my example here, the reason why I can't turn this way is actually because I happen to have a spinal alignment issue, a little bit of a lingering my old problem, where I'm kind of tilted and turned in the curve in that direction. So kind of like if you imagine if I had a towel here in front of me, if my body's twisted this way, if I try to twist it more that way, it'll stop it. So if I'm already twisted this way, if I was to work in that direction over here to that side, I'm really not helping my cause. I'm really just pushing it further into my injury, essentially. That actually becomes a thing I don't want to do in this case. Now, similarly, if you took me to the gym, let's say, let's just go work all this out, let's get my muscles stronger, there's flaws on that too, because I'm a crooked person. not literally in niceness, but in terms of my spine, right? Yeah, so if I just injure and work myself out, then any general exercises can mess my spine up too, because I'm working something that's not straight, essentially. But then let's take it one step further. If this was my bad side that I did, because I'm twisted this way, then you may argue, well, Chip, could you make that better by only working it the other way? So this is what we're all going to do here. So one more time, give yourself a reminder of the one you disliked the most. In my case, over here to this side. Because what we're now going to do is I'm going to set up a little timer here for us of about 1.5 minutes. And what we're going to do is for the next 1.5 minutes, we're only going to exercise to the one you liked better. In my case, this way. So I'm going to go ahead and start, so everybody do it with me. Now you may choose, while you're turning to your good one here, to do it more repetitious, kind of like I'm doing here, kind of in and out. You can do it fast if you like. I just got 3 little pops when I do that. Or you can do it slower. You may also choose to just hold it there if you want. Just kind of count to 5, 10, or 20, whatever you like. But if you do that, kind of still push that as big as you can. Now, me not knowing how many people are out there watching this right now, if there was, let's say, a room of 20 in front of me right now, I'd probably see 2 of them are starting to get a rib spasm. If that's you, you can slump a little bit when you do that. If it's not you, just keep doing what we're doing here. Now, by the way, this is right around the point where people realize 1.5 minutes is longer than you think it is. So we're at 44 seconds just so you're right now on my timer here. So once again, keep going to this one. So quick reminder again, why am I going this way? It's because I had a spinal problem that was compressed in the other direction. In this case, my right side. And I'm wanting to run this crazy little theory here that would say, could I get working on my good side, the one again that I like better this direction, could I do this for 90 seconds in such a way that would get my spine into a better spot? Maybe it's not compressed in that arthritic presentation we talked about earlier. Maybe it's not my disc being pulled in that direction over there too. So 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and relax. Good. I'll go ahead and stop my timer here. Good. All right, so now we just tried this first exercise, wanting to see if I could teach you guys how to get your spine straighter. So once again, I could play more comfortably on a piano, maybe sit up taller. But just in general, how could you know? Obviously, I can't see most of you through that camera. I actually can't see any of you through that camera unless I have superpowers, right? But so how could I know, how could you know if you just helped yourself if I wasn't there to do clinician stuff? Well, it's actually pretty simple, because if you just got your spine into a better spot, what you'll now see is we're going to go back and retest the one you disliked more, the one I hated more, in this case, my side over here. And what you're asking yourself is, what do I think of the strain over there? In my case, my rib. Can I get any farther in my range of motion? Things like that. So once you go back and retest your bad one again, there you go. Yeah, good. I still eventually hit that rib on me, but I'm about 1 number further on the clock before I got there. So I like that better. So in my case, I kind of like that exercise there. So I might say, I might want to do that again. Because maybe you're someone who's had this problem over here for 20 years as opposed to 20 hours. So if you've had something that's been stuck in you for a while, even if you improve yourself pretty well right now, as 10 o'clock this morning becomes this afternoon, becomes tomorrow morning, and so forth, you'll naturally see that guy go tighten back up over there again, right? But then you may say, but that's all right, I just learned how to keep an eye on it, because when it was more stuck out of whack, I can only turn this far. And I also learned I could treat it out by going that way. So you might say, what if I kept an eye on that? What if I try to get to where I'm symmetrical, large, and flexible? Now, by the way, people who have the perfect spine, if you think of my legs are here and there's a line between my shoulders, you should be turning such that there's a line between my shoulders pointing relatively straight behind me, like 90 degrees to 6 o'clock behind me. So if you're out there doing this thing, then you need help. So once again, you can work that one side twist to help the other one. And that's, again, can be a good arthritic one as well as a disc one as well. So there's treatment exercise number 1, what I call my first 90-second miracle. But now we're going to move on to the next one here. What if it was more in the pelvic area? Now, what if it was more down in here? And you saw you didn't like that leg lift earlier. So I'm just going to kind of make this up here. So let's say I'm right there on my right leg. Actually, I'm not making that. That is kind of tight on me this morning. So what I want you to do is go back to the front of your seat. We're going to do the test we did earlier. So you're going to go ahead and put your left leg out in front of you. Again, sitting up nice and tall. And kind of lift that left leg up again as high as you can. Don't slump or lean back. Just lift it up as high as you can. And like, for example, I may measure it on a table in front of me and kind of see where that is and think about which muscles I'm feeling as I hold that there. And then ask yourself, which leg do I like better? Do I like that one? Or go back to the other one. Now notice I'm not doing this. That's a different test. It's straight on the ground, sitting up tall. And then again, compare that to the other leg. So again, what do I think of that one there on that same table measurement, for example? So far I like this one better than this one. So again, I happen to also know the reason why I struggle picking up this leg is a little bit of part of my history as well, is I actually did have a few nice falls on my butt and tailbone when I was a kid, and then got a significant shift over there in that direction there. Had it since I was 8, essentially. And that's my tighter one now. So once again, which one do you like better? Which one do you not? Now, if this was my bad leg, and that's happening because I'm jammed over here, in the past I would say, I better go stretch that out. Or I better go work that out. Now, people have been stressed a lot in research over the years because everyone in research would agree the more flexible people have less injuries. However, the stress comes into play is if you look at studies on stretching as an action, the people who stretch a lot as athletes, for example, before an activity, are more likely to get injuries than the people who do nothing or do what's called an active warm-up. Yeah, so in other words, people are saying flexibility is good. Why does stretching create problems for me? You know, there's a lot of injuries coming out of that. And no one's really ever offered up much of an explanation for that, but I think it's this. If I have my jammed pelvis bone, for example, over here on the right, if I go to stretch that direction out, I'm just pushing it further into the injury I already know I've got. More likely to have problems there. So that again becomes the thing I wouldn't want to do. But using the same principle, if this is the leg I didn't like, you may say, what if we switched legs? What if I worked only the good one here? So in this case, I'm going to work my left one here. You want you to pick the one you like the best, and we're back to another 90 seconds. So you can go ahead and start. Now while you're doing the exercise, I will let you lean back a little bit if you like. So just kind of like so, going up and down like that. Now once again, I think about fatigue level. I tell people if I cut my leg off and put it on a scale, God makes my leg bigger than my arm, and my spine even for that matter. So this can be tiring. So as you're going along here, you might say, gosh, we're only 20 seconds into this. Can I use my hands? I'll say, yep. Go ahead and use your hands. That's fine. We'll go ahead and pull that up here. Yeah, that's all good. Or can I just stare at it for a bit? Or maybe you just say, can I rest it on the floor here and there is fine. Or maybe you can just kind of keep on going. That's fine. Or you may say, I got on pants under like Dr. Carol Ann over here. She didn't have the pants on, so I didn't have her do this exercise. But maybe you do. Yes, maybe you can grab that pant leg and go up there. Don't rip any pants and send me the bill or anything like that. But you can still got 40 seconds left on this one. And once again, to be clear, we're only working the leg you liked better. This was the good leg on this leg raise here. And using again what we now know as our total motion release or TMR technique on that. Now if you're starting to feel kind of heavy on that and you say, can I bend my knee a little bit on that leg instead? I'll say sure, you can do that. In physics class, that shortens the lever, makes it a little more doable. If you want to know where you are, we're at 13 seconds left. We're almost there. So again, stretch it, pull it, reps, whatever you like so. 4, 3, 2, 1, well done. You can go ahead and stop that. Excellent. So now comes the question. If I had a back, a disc, an arthritic compression, a pelvic problem, whatever it happened to be that wouldn't let me do this one over here, how could you know if it helped you when you didn't want to again spend the $3,000 on the MRI that wouldn't show it anyway? Yeah, so by the way, CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays don't show pelvic problems at all. Yeah, so this is something that's more of a clinical evaluation. So go back to your bad leg again. So now you're thinking again, I'm back to where I can't lean back. As I pick that leg up and I measure it there, actually, I don't know if you can tell on the camera out there, I just gained about that much on that leg. So I like the leg raise. So now I know I worked my good twist over here. I worked my good leg lift here. Now I want to know, did that help me with the main symptoms I just had? So now we're going to go back to our main problem today. So actually, we'll have you come back up again here for this part. So if you remember the test that we did earlier that you said was your least favorite one, we're now going to go back and check that out again. Now to be fair, I wasn't watching her doing this exercise, so I was watching the camera here, but did you do the twist?
Yes.
Did you do the leg? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So when you noticed that, did you notice if your other twist got better?
It was definitely better.
Good. Did you notice if your other leg got better?
It was better.
Excellent, good. So she's 2 for 2. So now if you remember what her neck looked like, we're going to use the words same, better, or worse to hit that back left corner. What she did earlier. So those of you guys out there who are amateur physical therapists now, what do you think of that? How does that look? The range of motion, if I measured it with my stick here, for example, how did it look? What would you say the words same, better, worse on that tension spot?
Same at the moment.
Same at the moment. Now, the only thing I may slightly disagree on that's all I need for now, thank you, is did her range of motion look any bigger before she hit that spot? I would have said a little bit of yes. Now, if she had been in the clinic, I would have been measuring that, to kind of prove that there. But I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. You'll think I'm making up the story, by the way. It's actually a crazy true story. But not too long ago, I had this shoulder patient came in. This guy on his first appointment picked his arm up right there. And he said, now we have a scale from 0 to 100. He said, that's a 100 problem. I can't do that. I said, I agree. We went and did our first session. At the end of his first appointment, he did this. And then he said this, I'm not any better at all. I'm still 100. And I remember I was in the chair. I literally almost fell out of my chair. I was like, you've lost your freaking mind. I was like, you were right there, and now you're way up here. But I knew what he was trying to say. He was trying to say, I eventually pushed it far enough to the point where the pain level was just as bad. But then I took him back here. I said, but how are you right there? He said, no pain. I said, well, that was 100 pain just a little bit ago. So point of being here is I'm not just saying that for her, for my visual of that, but for you two out there testing this. If you feel like you hit a similar strain, but it was a bigger test when you hit it, that still counts, because what that meant is there was less pain on the first spot that enabled you to push it a little harder. So if you haven't done it so far already, go back to what you called your worst test between those options. Remember, we had in the back, the front, left and right, or this one, left and right, or the leg lift, or again, that neck, same kind of thing. And make a little note. Did you notice if that neck or spine also responded to that? Now, of course, this is just addressing a couple pieces in the puzzle. Go back to what we talked about earlier, 206 bones, 600-ish muscles in the body. You may have other things in there that we haven't addressed yet that might be part of your spinal problem. I may have a funky knee that's creating my back. Well, that's the case, your back won't feel better until we address that knee, for example. But this will kind of give you an idea of a little bit of how to play. All right, so as we move on to the next section here. So again, going back to our postures. What is the best posture for me as a teacher on the piano? Or for that matter, as even someone who's playing or just in general in life. So remember, it kind of depends on your diagnosis. If the arthritics per spine people, if you're someone who says, I prefer to be slumped, I prefer to be bent forward, we would actually, for right now, while you have that injury, prefer you spend more time sitting than slumped. Now that may stress out the piano people who say, but this looks so much more orchestra nice, right? Yeah, and you're right, that does look prettier. And we'll actually talk when we get to the shoulder, there's benefits to the shoulder also of being in this position. But if you have the arthritic spine, you hate these back bend corners, I actually want you to, for now, while you're trying to get through this injury, slump and be in this position instead. And if you had the choice to teach a student sitting or standing, if you're the arthritic person, choose sitting for right now. So that may be you. So maybe there's the next category we've got here if you're a disc injury. Well, these people, remember, hate to be bent forward. They hate to slump. So you want them to be really tall and really erect. Now, they sometimes can find they prefer to be tall when they're here. Sometimes standing, rather. Sometimes they may prefer to be tall here. That's a variable. You can go with whichever one we'll talk about in a moment is more comfortable for you. But at least if you're a disc patient, we would prefer you to be here. If, however, you're more of a pelvic patient and you found your worst tests were these things we just did, those people, again, are going to get worse in sitting. So you may say, I need to teach my students or hang out more in standing. Or if you're playing, I guess we'd go more back to the Jerry Lee Lewis days or maybe the Happy Elton John or something. So let's play more standing up. Maybe get your foot up there. I'm just kidding. I don't know if they would teach that or not. Yeah, but nonetheless, we'd say lesser sitting is going to be good for you if that was the case. So what's the secret? How do you know what's best for you? Well, it's going to be to find the most comfortable, least tight position. So we're actually going to do a little lab time, but so I'm going to do this kind of myself with this, but I'll talk you through it. So what I'd like for you to do is just go down and sit in a chair. If you happen to be at your piano bench and you want to test it out there, that's fine. Whatever you normally do. So what we're going to do is the secret to this is as you scan yourself over the next few minutes, you're thinking, what's the most comfortable option? Now that comfort isn't necessarily going to go pain, no pain. We're thinking tensions, stretching, tightness, any weak spots as well. So for example, I want you, while you're sitting here, I want you to sit up really nice and tall. Now when I do this, I tend to close my eyes when I do that. So there's normal pressure points I'm going to feel when I'm sitting. I happen to feel the stool under my butt, obviously, and I feel my feet touching the floor, so that's normal. But what I'm also scanning for is what has higher tension on it than other places. So for example, on me, I feel a little pull under that right rib there. I feel my right butt bone pushes heavier into my seat than my left butt bone does. I feel a little pull on my neck right here. I feel like my pinky toes are pushing into my shoe more than my big toe is. slightly tight on my calf. A little bit of a furrowing right here too, but I could go on. But point is, again, I'm thinking if I don't move from this position for the next 3 hours, these things I'm listing off that have tension and pressure points on them will become my pain, problem, nerve compressions down the road, even a couple hours from now, for example. So I'm thinking, is this my favorite option if I'm sitting here? Now let's compare that to when you slouch. I want everybody literally to slouch for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to do that scan again. Again, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. So if I'm in this position here, what's different? Well, actually, I'd say I'm feeling more on the back of my tailbone, a little heavier on my right butt bone than I was before. But I'm feeling less tension here and in my shoulders and neck, for example. So far, I'd say I'm kind of not fully happy and slouched. I'm not fully happy and tall. So my happy spot may be somewhere in between. So this right here, when I'm in this position, I'd say is my softest, best option here so far for sitting between those. Now, you may have a chair that allows you to go up higher or lower. If you can do that, go ahead and play with that too. If I took my chair up higher, do the same scan. If I took my chair down lower, do the same scan. But I'm also going to give you another little wrinkle here for sitting. Let's say this was the position I liked the best a second ago. I'm thinking I'm here in the neutral position. What if you now slightly rotate to one side? So in my case, it's my left. You may think it's my right, but it's my left. And I'm thinking, do I like this position? And how does that compare to the center? And how does that compare to my right? So once again, in my case, I'd say my most comfortable was in the middle, but I'd say my most tight, least comfortable one was over here on the right. So if I was to work with a student, I would probably want to sit with them that makes me turn to my left. That's my good side. That's the one my body's more comfortable in. And I'd want to make sure I don't hang out on the right side on them, because that was my bad guy. Take it also back to that twist exercise we did a little bit ago. This was my tighter one. I don't want to be on that right. I'd rather be over here on this side as an exercise, but also as a posture. So again, you're thinking sitting, I can go tall chair, low chair, slump, tall. Do I want to be here? Do I want to be here? Don't think of it again as that every single person should go back to that picture I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. We should all be here. You're not. You may have an injury and you may find this is your best choice right here, for example. Now that's the sitting scan. Let's do the exact same thing from the standing position. So those of you guys out there, go ahead and stand on up. Now I'm going to close my eyes and kind of do that same scan again, but I'm going to start off pulling on my hair here. I'm going to get myself really tall postured. Now I'm thinking again, I feel a little more weight on my right calf than my left. I'm still feeling that rib in there. And not too bad in my shoulders. And again, you're thinking again, where's your pressure tension points? Then I'm going to cut that string off my hair and I'm going to allow myself to slouch a little bit more. Now in this case, I'm better down here, but I'm actually worse in my butt and I'm more tense on my neck actually. So far, if I'm standing, I prefer this one better. Now what about my feet? What if I shift where this one leg's in front and shift more weight to that one leg? Do that same scan again. Do I feel comfortable on this leg? Do I feel more comfortable on this leg than I did when I had equal on both legs? And once you got a sense of that, switch to the other foot too. Got it? I'm saying, I'm checking myself out too. All right, so far on me, I'd rather be taller postured, and I prefer my left leg even more than I prefer both at this moment. So this is the one I like better. So now we're going to keep that. Now we'll take it to the left-right turn again. So I'm going to keep the position I just found I like the best, and I'm in the middle. Now I'm going to rotate slightly to my left again. I'm thinking, how do I feel tension pressure points over here? Again, how does that compare to if I'm in the center? And how does that compare to if I'm over here? All right, so we're kind of putting all these things together here. So first of all, do I see a trend of, do I have lesser tension points when I was sitting or standing? Which one was more comfortable to me? In my case, I like standing better than sitting. The second question I then said, tall or slumped? In my case, I like taller better. Third question was, do I like the feet? I like weight on this leg a little bit better than both. Fourth question was, do I like more to be one side? I kind of like this side better on me. So if I'm a piano teacher right now, which I'm not, and you guys, if you heard me play, it would be disgusting because I don't play. I play a little guitar, but not piano. I would be on this side of my student, tall postured, standing, more weight on this leg, and working with them in this direction. Now again, that's my body. That's not going to be yours. So the principle is, again, the rules have gone out. We used to say everyone's going to be here, no more. If you are comfortable, uninjured, you will find you will be very comfortable in that position. But otherwise, you're thinking, Where is my body the most comfortable? Standing or sitting, slumped or tall, left or right, tall chair, short chair, weight on this leg, weight on that leg. Find your best spot, and for right now, that's where you should hang out. Now, let's say you're finding that your favorite position is something that looks like bad posture to you. Like you may say, Chip, that looks out of balance there. You might say, Chip, if you only work this direction, aren't you going to be throwing yourself out of balance? Well, the people who ask me that, what's the flaw in the question? They're assuming I'm in balance right now. The people who had everything straight are going to prefer to be here. Since I've got some still a little jammed on the right from my old injury, I'm actually helping myself by going over here, just like my exercise, for example. But if you get to the point where everything's healed and comfortable, you may come back and say, well, right now, actually, I like being in the middle. That's where I like to be. So you're going more for comfort, adding that little extra step. Next time you're with a client or a student, whether you're on the computer, doing the virtual classes, or whether you're more so in the actually one-on-one with someone directly, or otherwise, take your 10, 20 seconds just to check yourself out and say, which one is my best option there? And that's where you need to play. So that's going to be the kind of in general what I've gone over so far with the neck and the spine. Now, as we go into more of the shoulder area over the next few minutes here, you're going to find a lot of the same principles apply. God connects my shoulder to my neck, my shoulder to my spine, my shoulder to my ribs, my shoulder to my pelvis here. So again, I can have this old pelvis problem that could be the causation of my shoulder problem. So a really good clinician is going to know how to differentiate and how to test out the differentiation between those couple things here. So as we go into shoulder over the next little bit, now we're going to start talking about something called the rotator cuff. Now, over the last couple hundred of workshops I've taught around this Raleigh area here over the last few years, it's not uncommon that someone will come in and tell me they've got a rotator cuff problem. That's what they often say. So not a cup, it's not anything that's an athletic supportive equipment. It's actually the rotator cuff with an F here. Now, also times people think the rotator cuff is this one piece of tissue, that's called my shoulder. It's actually not, which leads us to our next little section here. So it's actually a group of 4 muscles and the tendon that attaches that muscle to that bone. And its main purpose is to try to keep my arm bone into the socket there. Now, some people in their definition of the rotator cuff, they also include some ligaments and some bursae and some other things called, some labrum and stuff like that. Basically, they can do that if they like, but it's basically the idea is we're trying to keep that arm bone in that cup of that shoulder right through there. That's keeping it stable and moving in that socket like it should be. That's the main purpose of the rotator cuff there. But most people will say mostly 4 muscles and 4 tendons. I won't worry about telling you the name of the muscles right now, but they're trying to stabilize that shoulder. Now, the main shoulder joint is what's called a ball and socket joint. So my arm bone here comes in here with this nice little round ball on it, joins onto the socket of something that's part of my shoulder blade here. Now, in the case of the shoulder, it's actually a relatively small socket and a decent sized ball. So if this was physics class, when you got a big ball rolling on a tiny socket, the good news is on it, it allows for a lot of mobility. My arm can move in a lot of different directions, right? However, in physics class, when you increase mobility, what are you sacrificing out there? You can yell it out loud if you know the answer, but you sacrifice stability. So something that moves more is more likely to struggle staying in that spot there. So once again, we've got these muscles and tendons and so forth in our rotator cuff, and one of their big purposes is to try to keep that thing right square in the center where I move at my best there. So that's going to be that. Now, in terms of bones, the primary shoulder complex is made up of mostly 3 bones. It never made sense to me when I was younger and even a relatively younger adult when someone would fall on this thing and they say, I hit my funny bone. And it's so dumb looking back on it, I didn't understand what they meant because the technical anatomist to me says when you hit that thing that causes your hand to be tingly, you're technically hitting this thing called the ulnar nerve. So even back then I was like, it's not a funny bone, it's the ulnar nerve. Looking back, it's the humerus. So that's your arm bone, humerus, funny bone. I don't know why that took me 20 years to figure out that connection there. So again, arm bone here is called the humerus. And then where it joins on to my shoulder blade, the shoulder blade area here behind me is called the scapula. And the third main bone that makes up my shoulder complex is my collarbone up in here, which is known as the clavicle. But once again, go back and think about the 206 bones and 600 some odd muscles, is that clavicle, scapula, and humerus is significantly going to be influenced by my neck, my spine, my ribs, my pelvis, my hips, my feet, and hands and elbows and everything else like that. So again, other injuries can kind of come into play in that. So if you're someone who says, hey, I've actually got 10 problems in my history, neck, back, and obviously everything a little more complicated even than that, because all these guys are yanking and pulling on each other. So in my little video here, people often think that a shoulder kind of moves like this. So I'm just going to let this kind of play for a moment, so I think there might even be a little delay from how you watch it. But as you're watching this video here, people think, see how the arm bone's just kind of rotating on that socket right there. I'm going to play that one more time in case there's that little delay. So once again, you're just kind of thinking, I'm looking at this thing here, it's just kind of just rotating kind of up and down on that. So again, there it is one more time. But the truth is why this is a really nice, pretty video that I found on YouTube, is that, are we good? We got it? Okay, good. The truth is that that's not exactly how a healthy shoulder should move. It actually causes problems if that is the case. So I'll say, first of all, does it really move like that? And if it really did move like that, what kind of problems would that create? We'll talk about that in just a second. So this is really more so when we go to my next video here. This is how a healthy shoulder should move. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that there too. And again, I'll let you click on that. Now notice when you're watching this video, when the arm bone raises up the humerus, ski what the scapula and the clavicle is doing with it. See how it's kind of getting out of the way? It's moving with the arm bone essentially. Don't get to do that.
Click off, get off of YouTube.
Okay, so you're saying get off of me?
No, move the mouse off of the YouTube video.
Okay, gotcha.
Is it frozen?
Okay, gotcha. Okay, got it. So I'm back to the screen where I was before. Sorry, technical issues here. But I tell you what, why he's looking to fix that, what I'm thinking about is this. If this was me, my arm bone is not moving on a stable, still collarbone and scapula. It should be moving, all this stuff should be moving there with that. So then what happens is this. In the space that's in between the bottom of the tip of my shoulder blade here and my arm bone that's underneath it, in that space in between, we want as large a space as we can as possible. We good? Okay, I'll let you play there. We want as large a space as we can as possible in there, such that we don't want those things to pinch. So if you go back to the first video, if you saw that, what you would see is, again, in the first one, it's if the arm bone just does that and the shoulder blade's not getting out of the way, the collarbone's not getting out of the way, that arm bone is going to pinch into the roof of that shoulder blade like that. Had it not done that, had it gotten out of the way, those tissues that are in that space would be, thank you. So should I play that one more time, or should I just move to the next slide? Is fine?
Start from where that second video.
Okay.
I'll follow you.
Okay, got you. All right, so here's the first one. Here's the second one. All right, so hopefully this will pop back up again. But if you can see the difference between the first video and the second one, again, notice how, again, the shoulder blade's getting out of the way. And that keeps, again, from that arm bone underneath pinching and smacking into the roof of that shoulder blade. Now, in between that space again, we're going to see some things like, so again, I was saying my little notes here should get out of the way, and we don't want it to pinch. So in between that spot, we've got some tendons. You don't have to know these words, but in case you've had a problem, if you've ever heard you had a supraspinatus tendon tear, if you've ever heard that you had bursitis, if you've ever heard you had a labrum problem, my dad has a tear of what's called a long head of the biceps tendon that's in there. So again, all these tissues that are in that area, when you start to allow them to pinch, what's going to happen, it starts to create injuries. Now there's going to be a different progression of that injury we're going to talk about in the next slide there. But again, we don't want that to pinch. Am I good?
Yep.
All right, so the first thing that starts to happen when those things pinch is what's called the shoulder impingement. Now, if you had to have a shoulder problem, this is by far the one you want. This is the easiest one to fix. This is the one when you do the exercise we're going to do for this in just a moment, you will notice when you do that exercise, you will have a very obvious improvement when you do that. So that's going to be, if you had to have one, that's the one you want. Because all that's happened there so far is that pinch has just led to pain and inflammation of those tissues there. So the bursies start to get fatter and the tendons start to get hot, essentially. But let's say that same mechanic was happening longer, or if I did have someone who had a stumble or a fall, you can now lead to the next category, which is called the partial rotator cuff tear. So think of that again as I'm starting to get little tiny frames on the rope and little tiny smaller size tears with that. So we still good? Good? Okay, good. So now these people still, the good news is, usually will still get better with a good clinician with conservative treatment. You don't necessarily at this point have to have surgery at this juncture. But when you do the exercise I'm going to have you do for this one in a moment, if you're in that category, you'll notice a little bit of improvement probably, but you won't have a dramatic improvement. If I had a group of, again, 30 people in a workshop out here in front of me, the impingement people will see their arm fly up in the air when they get better. The small tear people will say, yeah, it's a little better, something like that. Now let's say, again, this pinch has gone down a little bit more, or again, I had another trauma associated with it. The next progression is what's called the full thickness rotator cuff tear. So we got the bigger ones now. Yeah, there you go. So these are the people you can kind of see what they look like in testing. So we're gonna have Dr. Carol Ann up here in a little bit. We're gonna be treating her out in a second too. She says she's in the big category. So what that means is when I treat her out, she'll probably not get better. So she thinks. So we'll see if that's true or not. Yeah, but again, these are the people when you go to pick up their arm. If they're really nasty, they'll look like this. I'll say pick your arm up, and they'll have this flipper arm here. In other words, you're not going to even get your arm over your head. So that's the really nasty ones. The ones that are surgical are the people that no matter which way you lift them, they tend to hang out kind of in this zone right through here. Now, if you've ever had a rotator cuff surgery, you'll probably recommend to your friends if you can ever not have it. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah, it's a long recovery. It's the uncomfortable therapy. You're in the stupid sling for way too long, and then you finally get out of it, and you start to get a little bit of movement. So it's really about 6 months before you start to feel like you're back to normal again. Yeah, but even then you might say, boy, wouldn't it have been nice if I addressed it when there was the impingement? Yeah, because, again, those people, it's like a few weeks as opposed to months, of treatment to get back to fully normal again. So that's the next one. Now there is another category where the brain senses the inflammation and irritation is so sinister over here that it's almost like it says, I'm going to put every muscle in the neighborhood in lockdown mode. And I'm just not going to let you move that stupid shoulder for like a year and a half. And so this one is called adhesive capsulitis, or the slang for that is known as the frozen shoulder. Now again, if you happen to have that, if I ever had any muscle or joint pain in orthopedics of a patient who comes into my physical therapy clinic, by far I would tell you the slowest healing, slowest progressing diagnosis of any part of the body to me is that stupid frozen shoulder. I usually will shake someone's hand. I guess we don't shake hands anymore. I'll fake shake hands, I guess, these days with someone else. And if I ever had diagnosed them with a frozen shoulder, I'll say, I hope you like us okay, because you're going to know us for a really long time. Now, once again, even sometimes if you leave these things untreated, sometimes if you just don't move it for a year and a half, I tell people it's almost like the brain and God designed my body to say, by not moving it for that time, some healing's happening. Then all of a sudden, a year and a half, they wake up one day and they say, hey, I can kind of move it again. But then what happens to them then? They start moving it again, but the same cause and the mechanics that caused them to get injured in the first place, they go back to doing the old habits, and then they're back in trouble again. They'll see it again. So again, the frozen shoulder people, nasty diagnosis, as are the full thickness rotator cuff care. If you can get yourself in the impingement category, treat it out fast, so much easier to clean that up than it is the next one. Now there's one more category. This young gentleman came in and saw me as a new patient yesterday afternoon, and he's been popping his shoulder out of joint probably 20 times, I think, something like that in his history. And he's still pretty young. He's in his 20s, but has a lot of skiing, trick skiing backgrounds and things like that. Well, anyway, we're taught to think that instability where the thing wants to pop it out of the shoulder a lot, if that's you, we're taught to think of it as just the loose ligaments that doesn't keep that in the socket. However, what I'm finding is there's some looseness there, but actually I'm finding the real secret isn't actually in that. Because remember, again, like we saw in that video, the arm should be moving in conjunction with my shoulder blade, my collarbone, which only moves as well as my neck moves, which only moves as well as my ribs moves, only moves as well as my spine moves. So I find it's the tightness of the things that attaches to in my scapula, my neck, and my shoulder blade, and ribs, and back, and otherwise. If that shoulder blade moves with the arm bone, because the whole system is flexible, that thing still stays in the socket really well. However, if you have a really lot of stiffness here, then that thing's going to that arm bone's going to move, and it'll go into that ligament. It'll kind of push out there. So I freaked this guy out yesterday a little bit because he's now been to multiple therapists, and he even had surgery of his labrum, and he still wasn't fixed. And I came in, and he's done all these exercises on his shoulder to try to make it more stable. It didn't work. And I gave him yesterday, interestingly enough, a stretch that got his hip less tight and a stretch that got his spine aligned better. And he actually went back to the wall, and at the beginning of the session, he said, that thing's going to come out of socket. He felt really sick. At the end of that, he said, it's stable. And he was freaking out. He's like, how the heck did you just make my arm stable by doing my spine and my leg? Yeah, but once again, you get the tightness out of the system in the middle, it makes the socket move with the arm bone there. So here's the thing. The nice thing is whether you happen to have a trauma, all of these problems essentially are caused by the exact same thing. And what is that thing? So we'll go to the next screen here. So what's the number one most common reason why your neck, back, or shoulder problems begin, return, or don't heal properly? Well, it comes back to what we talked about. Is because the main cause has not been addressed, as I wrote down here. And the main cause is tightness in my body that pulls my system out of balance and changes the mechanics essentially of how I move. So again, in this case of this younger gentleman, he had a super tight old hip problem from his trick skiing. And that guy was leading his shoulder blade to not move, and his arm was coming out of socket there. Or again, maybe it leads into pinch, maybe it gives us something else. But that's going to be unique to you. Your key issue of tightness may be in your neck or your ribs or your spine or your shoulder blade or your knee or your foot. I could have to give you a knee exercise to change your shoulder problem if that's the case. Everybody's got their own story. But the secret is tightness in the body that alters the mechanics of the shoulder and the spine for that matter. If I had that tight hip right here, I could pull my spine over here. Now I've got an arthritic compression. I could pull the pelvis over there. Now I've got a pelvic dysfunction. I could pull my disc so that inner material, that disc wants to come out of that catch-up packet to that back left corner. Now I've got a disc hitting that nerve over there. But they're all coming from these tight, imbalanced muscles pulling it out of whack, causing those changes in those mechanics. So let's think about shoulder postures. So problematic postures for shoulder people. So you think about, we talked about earlier, I want the space in between the bottom of my shoulder blade and the top of my arm bone here to be large. We want the bigger that, the better. If I start to slouch a lot, what I'm doing here, or for those of you guys working on the computer out there right now, if you're doing it right now, what I'm doing if I slouch a lot, I'm bringing the shoulder blade on top of my arm bone. I'm decreasing that space. So even if you want to test it on yourself, sit up really tall, then pick your arm up. Then slouch a lot and try to pick your arm up. And what you'll notice, even if you're healthy, you want to have the same range of motion there. And really the reason for that is, again, is my shoulder blade is pinching down on the top of my arm bone. So if I'm an impingement or a tear person, this will create more problems for me. But where's the flaw in that? Where's the flaw if I said, all right, I guess I shouldn't slouch if I'm a shoulder patient. But let's say you had the arthritic spine. And you're someone who said from earlier we went over, my back only feels good if I slouch. So now what do? I need to slouch for my spine, but my shoulder hates that. Again, this is where things get a little more complicated, right? But in general, this position creates more pinching. Now also, another thing, so do I slouch a lot with my students was part of the question there. But also the people, one of my number one most common complaints of shoulder people is raising it, but probably the most common number one is trying to sleep. So when I lay down on that arm. Now what I'm doing when I lay on that side is I'm literally pushing my arm bone up into that space. So I'm actually adding to the compression of those tissues. So if I lay on that for 8 hours tonight, I'm going to wake up saying, oh my gosh, I maybe wake up at 2 in the morning hurting, or maybe I wake up the next day saying, man, I'm so stiff on that arm. And that's because when I laid on that, I added to the impingement, I added to that pinch. So people often say they have to go to this side. Actually, teaching this to a shoulder and back pain patient yesterday, it was interesting. He said, well, I can't lay on my right side because I've got a hip problem. I can't lay on my left side because it hurts my shoulder. I can't lay on my back because I snore a lot there and my wife elbows me all night if I'm there. And then I can't lay on my stomach because it makes my head in an uncomfortable position. So I said, all right, we're going to ship you to outer space where you can float around in space and you don't have to lay down or something like that to sleep. But point is, again, the complexity of how the body relates to itself, one problem may feed another as well. So once again, important, even if my only pain's my neck, or my only pain's my shoulder, my only pain's my back, you still want to make sure you have someone who's addressing the system, because that changes my postures as well. Now, for the people who have had that rotator cuff surgery, they'll also find too that when you get the sling right afterwards, you'll see there's a little pillow in that armpit. Kind of gets them out here. So you might say, what's the purpose of that pillow? Because you kind of feel kind of weird walking around like this thing for 2 months. Well, the purpose behind the pillow is actually a good one, as what the research says. If you get the arm about 30 degrees offset from the side, the pinch is actually less, but also too the circulation through that tissues of that shoulder is significantly improved. So again, do I have a posture where I'm really tight in here? Or do I allow myself a little bit to kind of get out to the side a little bit from there? So maybe a good sleeping posture for you might be, again, the best shoulder posture is going to be laying on my back, good neck support, little pillow in my armpit, and again, just kind of comfortable position there. Again, gets that space out there. So again, that one may be you. Do you need to change your sleeping posture? Do I need to change from here to here if I'm a shoulder patient? But would my back be comfortable if I did that? Do I need to stand up tall? Do I need to sit down in order to make that happen? all these factors in here. So you see how our job in physical therapy becomes really fun? Because everybody is their own little Rubik's Cube. We got to solve a puzzle for everybody's their own individual patient on that. Everybody's going to have a unique little different answer. So here's the next step. How do I know if there's hope for me? Is the only hope for me surgery, or is there other kind of things there? Well, here's the thing. I like to ask this little question. I want you to kind of raise your hand to yourself. I know I can't see you there. But if you happen to have problems where you say, I feel increased pain in the day if I'm sitting, if that's you, you can kind of raise your hand. If you were to say if I feel increased pain more so in my back or otherwise if I'm standing or walking around for a while. Again, raise your hand if that's you. Or maybe it's if I had to bend over a lot, if that's you. Or maybe say, you know, my worst pain and my problem is actually when I get out of bed in the morning or when I'm sleeping. In the middle of the night is when I struggle the most. Or maybe it's the arm. Maybe it's when I'm reaching overhead. Or maybe when I'm, again, reaching to the back seat to kind of get that thing out of the back seat. Or maybe it's when, again, I'm just kind of getting dressed or putting my clothes on or doing my hair. It doesn't take me long to do my hair, but you get the point on that. So if you raise your hand on any of those things, even in your brain, if you didn't literally do that, the good news is, if you have an action that you know that you did that makes your pain worse, that's actually good news. Now I'll tell you what I mean by that in just a second here. Because the good news is if you can actually do an action that reproduces your pain, in other words, if you can make something go up with an action, that also means you can do something that makes it better as well. We'd much rather have the person who says, I do this, I get worse, I do this, I get better. Because if that's the case, you've got what? You've got a muscle and joint problem. So who are the people we really worry about? Let's say I had someone who had this shoulder pain or back pain, and they say, doesn't matter what I do all day long. I'll sit all day, I'll stand all day, I'll jump up and down, I'll lift 500 pounds over my head, I'll go boxing, I'll lay on that arm. My pain is the same every single moment of the entire day. Now, sometimes people say that and it's not really, that your body awareness just kind of stinks. Yeah, but if it literally is, that's the case, then you might not have a muscle or joint problem. Those people might have a tumor. They might have a bladder problem. They might have a uterine issue. They might have a lung problem or something like that. It just looks like a shoulder or back. So if you have a pain that's relatively significant and there's nothing in a movement, action, or posture you do that makes it go up or down, go talk to your doctor. You might want a blood test. But thankfully, again, that's this percent. Most of the time you're saying, I've got this muscle or joint problem that will be increased with certain actions and decreased with other actions. So what are the three choices if I had a problem of what I could do? Well, not an uncommon thing is choice number one is, which is the number one most common mistake in all of orthopedics, is we can ignore the problem. If I just give it long enough, it'll take care of itself. Like you don't have any idea how busy I am. It's been a tough financial year with COVID, and I've got all these clients I've got to see out there. I don't have time to go get that shoulder looked at or something like that. Now, this again is not an uncommon action. And I'm guilty of that. Healthcare practitioners are the worst for that, by the way. We're terrible about seeking out care from other people. But I remember there was a time not too long ago, my wife woke me up on a Tuesday, I have Tuesdays off, and she said, by the way, you have a physical at 10 o'clock this morning. And I was like, no, I don't. I didn't schedule anything. She was like, yeah, you do. I schedule it. 10 o'clock. You better get ready. But then, now in her defense, I'm almost 50, and my previous physical to that was in the 90s. Yeah, so I was due on that. Now, in my defense, I checked out pretty well. So I went back home and I said, 20 years for my next one, right? Yeah, of course, that's stupid, but because I know what happens at 50, so I'm kind of trying to avoid that physical if I can help that. But nonetheless, so that's something that's not uncommon. Life gets busy. I'm taking care of my family and my friends and my work. Just give it long enough, it tends to get, maybe it'll go away. Now, the problem is sometimes the pain can go down. You adjust your postures a little bit. You figure out some strategies that makes the pain a little less inflamed. But going back to what we talked about earlier, if you have not done anything to change the mechanics of your problem, it's not going to get better. It's going to continue to get tighter, and these things will just keep pinching more. And then an impingement can become a tear. A little back problem can become a shooting down my leg problem and a blown disc or something like that. But that is not an uncommon thing. The people who say, I could ignore this. Now, the second category, which is very, very popular in the United States of America, is I'm going to alter the problem, alter it. Now, what do I mean by alter it? Well, this means I'm going to do something to change the chemistry of my inflammation, but I'm really not doing anything that's really addressing the mechanics of these things hitting that. So what do we mean by the chemistry and what we alter it? So there's kind of two big things there. Meds, pharma, let's throw the things in my mouth, over the counter or maybe prescription, and injections. Things like that. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a time and a place for medications and injections. But if I had, again, that tightness that wasn't letting my shoulder move properly and it was pinching, you give me that injection, I may say, hey, pain's less. Kind of like that. Kind of felt a little bit better. But the fact that I haven't changed my mechanics, it's going to go boom, 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 pinch again. And again, the longer that goes on that, might lead to that tear. So in other words, the flaw of pharma is it's not really solving the problem. It's just buying us a moment. Now, to back up a little bit of that, just kind of the world we live in, I actually remember back around 2008-ish, I went around Raleigh here, and I was introducing myself and a lot of the primary care doctors. And I brought this little survey out of my own curiosity on there. And I said, I got some questions I'd like to survey on you. I'm doing all these with all the doctors here. And I said, how many people did you see last week that had some type of muscle or joint problem? And not an uncommon answer, I guess somewhere in the vicinity of 100. I said, all right, second question. Of those 100 people, how many of them had some type of muscle or joint problem? Of course, this is way before COVID and other things, so maybe there's a flu season or something, but number kind of got to about 45 then. So all right, so I've got 45 people you saw last week with some kind of muscle or joint problem. And then I said, of those 45, so I said, first of all, before the next question, I said, Doc, what do you think about medications, injections versus physical therapy, chiropractic, massage therapy? What do you think about that compared to some of these other things, to their ability to solve your patient's problem? And every single one of them said, the pharma's not going to fix it, it just buys us a moment. The other things over here, I'm much more of a big fan of fixing it. I said, okay, I got you. So now I'm back to the survey. Next question, I said, Doc, of those 45 patients you saw with a muscle or joint problem last week, how many prescriptions did you write to a physical therapist, a chiropractor, massage therapist, and other things like that? And I kid you not, I did this, I don't even remember how many doctors asked this, it was a lot. I always got the same stupid answer on that. And the answer was the number 1. Now maybe it was 0, but they always told me 1. Maybe it was 1. I don't know, I'll give them the credit there. But then I'd say, all right, then how those same 45 people, how many of them left with some kind of medication in their hand? 45, right? So this is the point when I was younger, I would kind of ham it up a little bit, start rubbing my head and say, all right, Doc, you got me confused here. You just told me that, you just said the meds aren't going to fix it, they're going to alter it. You just told me over here that these other things could fix it, but yet everybody gets the meds and nobody's getting the other one. And I got to ask why. And I always got some variation of essentially the same answer. And the answer was essentially this. It's what the patient wants. The patient wants the drugs. To which I then would follow it up and says, well, sometimes, but are you sure that's what they want? Do you give them the list? Do you say, I can send you to the orthopedic surgeon. We can get you some radiology. You can try the physical therapy. You can try the chiropractor. You can try the massage therapist. You can try the acupuncturist. You can try the Shaka Zulu treatments. Let's lay hands on you and pray for you. All these options of possibilities you could try out there. Yeah, change my diet, all these other things. I said, do you ever give them the list? They say, no, I already know they want the drugs. So just so you know, there's always a high-priced pharmaceutical rep in your doctor's office making sure they believe that. Yeah, it's too. So just so you know, if you are interested in things that aren't just meds, you almost have to ask for it these days. You have to go to your doctor and say, can I try this? And they'll usually pee in their pants and get that, you want therapy? Okay, sure, of course. Yeah, they just don't believe that you believe that. Yeah, that's that. So that's, again, studies show that Americans have the most expensive urine in the world because of all the things we eat, and then we just pee out a lot of it too. So not again against pharma altogether, but we're altering it instead of fixing it or handling it, which is the third category here. Now, if you want to fix or handle that, I might have just given you for your spine a couple exercises that maybe help with that. We're going to do one for the shoulder in just a moment. So here's my next lad time. So first of all, I'd like for everyone to kind of stand on back up again. And Doc, you can come up here and show us the shoulder of yours. And what I'm going to have her do, I'm going to stand behind her. And what I want you guys to do is you're going to start with your arm by your side. Which shoulder is the history? Right, okay. So you're going to start with your arm by your side. You're going to rotate your thumb straight to the floor. And just kind of watch me for a moment because I'm going to measure you. And keeping that thumb pointed downward, raise the arm up sideways laterally. And what you're thinking is, do I stop here? Do I stop there? Do I stop there? How do I feel trying to do that? So
move it
so
over.
kind of sneak in there. There you go. So again, just the one arm here first. So again, kind of lift on up. Now come on back down. Now I may change this slightly to keep you on that rotation there as you do that. Now, considering her history, that's actually not too bad. I actually thought that would look uglier than that. Now, one of you guys out there may be saying, hey, look at me, I'm way down here. Or maybe I'm up here. Now, just once you do that, I want you to compare it to the other side. Now, remember, this isn't just checking your shoulder. You may say, I feel my ribs stretching when I do that. I feel my neck pinchy when I do that, for example. But you're thinking, what's everything I feel that? So one more time on each arm, actually. So go and you try out the other one like she just did. So now you're thinking, what do I think of this? And how would I compare that to that? So again, visually, she looks better than I thought she would. However, how's the feel of that? Would you say, Now, good. Yeah, so she's easy. You can come on back down here. It's fine.
Physical therapy.
She said, what's physical therapy if you didn't catch that through the mask? Gotcha. So yeah, so she probably had to work her butt off to get that there because she had a complete tear she was talking about earlier. So how long did it take you to get that shoulder back?
6 months the first year, about a 3-month follow-up the second year.
So 6 plus 3 months if you didn't hear that over there. So again, she earned that. So she just got a high five or low five actually. She walked out there because she gets kudos on that. But you may say, but you know what? I'm kind of stiffer here on this arm. This one over here looks pretty good. So what I want you to think about is, again, which one feels tougher to you, even if you think it's slight on that. Because using the same principles, once again, maybe I'm gonna make it up here. Let's say I hit that one right there on me, for example. This pinch that might happen on me here, again, probably from something in my ribs or my neck and my back kind of being pulled over there, again, causing that thing to pinch like we talked about. So once you kind of figured out the one you don't like as much, in my case, I'm saying this one. Actually, that is kind of legit. That's a little stiff right there. I'm feeling on that. What we're going to do is another one of these 90-second moments where we're going to stand on up, and I want you to only work the arm that you called the better one right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and start. So once again, good arm, thumb down. And as I start my timer, start raising the arm you like the better. Now I'm going to kind of win a little bit of Academy Award for this. You'll notice I'm kind of extending all the way to my feet. You might even see I'm up on my toes even slightly. You don't have to necessarily make it that dramatic. I just kind of like to do it that way. But I'm extending this so I'm not only stretching and exercise my arm, I'm feeling that extend and spread out my ribs. I'm feeling that pulling at my waist down here. I'm feeling that in my shoulder blade. I actually feel it in my calf even, interestingly enough, when I'm doing that right now, because I had kind of a tight calf today. So again, I'm only working the good arm in this case with the exact same movement. Now, you may be someone who says, that's boring, can I do it faster? Sure. Maybe you have a dumbbell handy, you want to do it with the dumbbell. You may say, can I just hold it up there? Maybe go John Travolta on me or something. Yeah, I just showed my age a little bit there, Saturday Night Fever. Yeah, so again, kind of hold it up there, just kind of pulling and stretching up there. Or maybe, again, you kind of keep it going up and down. If you're starting to get pooped out on it, you can rest it for just a second if you need it. But we still do have 30 seconds, so keep on going. So as we're doing this again, we're running in the next again of what we call a nice little mini experiment. What we're wanting to find out is what? Can I work my good arm enough to pull off the tension and the mechanics in my neck and my spine and my ribs to such an extent that my other arm will feel better on it? So then you may say, well, how in the world is that going to affect that? Is there going to be a magic juju that jumps from this arm to that arm? No, remember, it all connects together and it affects each other there, and you can stop. Good. So again, all this I have pulled over here, and the left shoulder felt a little tight on me over here a little bit earlier. I'm wanting to see in my leotard, can I do that? So how could you know if you did that? Well, in her case, I'd have her come back up here, but she felt pretty good. If she had looked kind of stiff, I would want to go check her out on her bad arm again. In my case, I could have done better on this on my first one, but I still just want to see if I'm still hitting that tight spot there. So this was the arm I thought was stiffer. Actually, I'm hitting something kind of up here still right now, but a couple minutes ago, I was feeling it there. So once again on you, if you kind of measured that, do you feel like your arm's getting any higher before it hits a pinchy spot? Or do you feel like it's any fluider or something like that? Now, by the way, just if you had a shoulder tension there and you happen to also have a neck problem and you happen to also have a back problem, you might actually find, hey, all of a sudden my neck feels pretty darn good too. And my back feels kind of different as well because I just released another joint and his tension's there too. So once again, another exercise that again can help you on that arm there. So I'll give you 3 today. So remember those 3 we did. And remember they all started off with a test where the left compared to the right. So if you happen to have one of those in particular that you felt helped you the most today, or if you found one that was the most stiff or the most out of balance, again, between that compared to that, or that compared to that, or this compared to that, and then you worked your good one and you liked it, keep working it. Keep working it for a couple weeks even. See if you can get that guy to cooperate and stick. Have you ever heard how long it takes to change a habit? Research would say 3 weeks to 5 weeks, somewhere in that vicinity. So you keep sticking something into a good place. If you get rid of all the other mechanics that would mess it up again, it's going to want to stick. Now just imagine if you made your shoulders stay, your neck stay in a good place, your back stay in a good place, your hips, and everything else like that. So there's that. So we kind of did this here. I'm going to kind of switch to the next one. We just did that exercise. So a little bit of background about us, whether you happen to be again here in Raleigh or otherwise. Like I said earlier, this thing we call total motion release. This started off with, again, that previous owner of the company, Tom, had this desire to want to create something to teach. I joined on with him in 2002 with all my problems too. We created this tool. He's now trained, like I said, a little over about 6,000 therapists all over the country. So if you Google this thing called TMR, or Total Motion Release, you will see literally hundreds of things pop up on the internet. And that actually started off with us right here, just a couple of us dudes trying to hurt and not wanting to hurt, here in Raleigh. So, but again, the cool thing about that now is that we realized if we can teach clinicians how to find and fix these things using these thoughts, we can teach patients how to make these things better. So whether you happen to be in Virginia or California or something like that, if you needed help from someone and you like the thought processes of what we did, if you go to something called Total TMR Seminars, you'll see a button at the top of that. That's Tom's company now. You'll see the button at the top of that. It says something like find a therapist near you under Total Motion Release, something along those lines. And you may type in your zip code or your city, and you might say, hey, there's a couple people in there that kind of learned that technique, for example. If you're here in Raleigh, obviously we're here too. But that technique, like I said, the cool thing is if I had something that was chronically in these positions for a long period of time, and we know, again, it's going to resist that. If the only gift I ever gave a patient was to put them on the table and pop them in or rub on their muscle or something like that, or just do something to them, there is value in that. Don't get me wrong. I see a lot of co-treating with chiros and massage therapists. I like them. But again, if that's the only good I ever gave them, you might already be jacked back up again by 11 o'clock tonight. But if you can do an exercise that made that better, even if you went to that other stuff, you can say, I can keep making it better myself, keep going in, and I can learn how to do it also as well. Now, we do happen to, I'll kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit here. Apparently there's professionals out there whose job is to go around and rank businesses. I've never really met these people, but I guess they rank restaurants and stuff like that. I don't know if they have that for piano companies or not, but we got this stamp last year and this year for 2019 and 20. They called us Best Therapist in Raleigh, so give me a stamp, I'll throw it on a book. That's fine with me. That's all good. So that's that. So if you could actually ask yourself, do I need some help? Or for that matter, this is where you help people like me who go around teaching these things to want to keep doing these seminars. So whether you're in California or here, I'm going to want you to actually do this again for just a moment to give us a little feedback. So if you can just pick up your cell phone first of all, and first of all, do I need help? So maybe you were in Raleigh. What are my options? So the people who say, I need help now, my neck and my shoulders all jacked up, I could use some help right now. So what are those options there? Well, we are in therapy. I'd recommend we have a 1-hour evaluation session if you came in for an appointment for them. With that, when we do that, we're in network with pretty much every insurance. So what are the things I get in the hour? The full head-to-toe evaluation of my whole system there, the diagnosis of your problem, the things like we were talking about. We try a few treatments out to see how you respond. We come up with a plan on how to move forward and fix things. You even get a book that has all these things kind of describing all that to you. And then we kind of move forward, and that's a regular copay session or something like that. So if that's you, think about that, and I'll tell you what to do in that in just a moment, especially if you're here in Raleigh. So now you can usually come straight to the clinic. If you don't have an insurance called Medicare in the state of North Carolina, you can come straight to therapy without a doctor prescription. If you have Medicare, you need a doctor prescription. So that's the difference there. So what are some other options if you don't need that? Well, one option could say, I know I've got a problem, so I'll continue ignoring it. Again, we talked about that earlier. Us dudes are kind of historically really good at that, but nonetheless, healthcare people get at that too. But we know what can happen if that is the case. Next is you can say, I can rejoice, I don't have a problem. I'm just here to learn about stuff for piano things. That's good. So if that's the case, you dance a little bit and say, I'm healthy. That's a good option there. Next is also, if you didn't want the 1-hour session, I do tell my office staff there's a couple slots a week if someone wants to be seen for kind of a free quickie moment in a 20-minute. That can be another option as well too. But what do you get in the 20-minute thing? Well, it's just a little bit of testing, a little bit of treatment moment, and a little bit of something to decide if you'd want to move further forward on that. So no matter what your situation, just to help us out, the fact that I taught you this, if you can get your cell phone out right now, and I want you to type in this number, 919-473-3690. This is my office staff, and they know to be receiving this right now. Now again, if you're watching this as a taped version on YouTube Live later, obviously you might want to say this is what I'm doing, but if it's live, they're expecting this right now, so just tell you who you are. Now, if you're willing, you can type your first and last name, but I don't care if you don't. Like I said, you're not going to be on a spam text or email list, I promise. We're too busy to do that anyway. But if you want to give us your first and last name, that's fine, that's optional. But then after you type in your name to that number, again, 919-473-3690, I want you to type one of these following things if you need help or not. So the first thing is just type the words help me. If you want the 60-minute evaluation that would be the copay, I myself, because I did this lecture here, I told them anyone who calls them with that, I'm going to be the one to take a look at you. So if you think you need that help and you're in the Raleigh area, type in help me. If you're out of state, you can go to, again, tmrseminars.com and try to find another clinician that maybe does these things. We don't own them, by the way. They just learned our technique. If you like the little 20-minute thing, again, I can't do quite as much testing and treatment in 20 as I can in 60 minutes, but text the words free 20 minutes. That's what you're going to text if that's you. If you say I'm fine, just type in I'm fine. But after that, if you also wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of opinion of what you thought about the workshop. Hey, Chip, I know you're not a piano guy, but I kind of like what we talked about in the neck, the spine, and the shoulders today. I thought that was really beneficial. I might even replay the YouTube link to my friends just some other time or something like that. Or you might say, man, I was good until you lost me on the leotard thing. You know, now I just kicked that stupid head out of me, image in my head or whatever it is. So again, give us some feedback on this. I've taught a lot of workshops, but there's that. And then just click send on that text. And then after that, if you have any questions, I don't know if you have the ability to chat or anything on that with YouTube or not, but if that is the case, you can also text a question to here as well. So I'm going to invite Dr. Carol Ann back up here as well, and that's our thing.
Well, I thank Dr. Chip. I thank Dr. Chip for coming today and getting us started on this. I know I was improving over there, trying all these different labs, and I enjoyed working with it, so I think it's something I'm going to continue to do. Secondly, our next workshop will be at the end of October. I believe it's October 30th, same time, Friday at 10, live streamed. It will be Barbara Lister-Sink from Salem College, and she will be talking about avoiding injury in playing. And so that will be terrific. At the end of that session, Ruggero Piano will be announcing and providing the award for the Teacher of the Year for Raleigh piano teachers. So we'd love for you to be able to join us. Our winner will be here, and we'll actually be here for a live presentation for you. Okay, and finally, we are excited to announce, because I wasn't sure this was going to happen, because this has been put on YouTube Live, there will be a link at Ruggero, and actually there will probably be some ways that you can go right to YouTube and actually type in something, am I right, and be able to get it in a few days or a day or whatever. But either way, at the Ruggero website, you can actually type on the link and see a film of this. And I'm excited about that because I have some students that would probably benefit, some high school students that would benefit from seeing this video. They're in school right now, but maybe they could see it tomorrow or next week sometime when they have time to go over some physical things. So again, thank you for coming today. We welcome your feedback. If you have anything, please type email to me, carolann.studio@gmail.com. Our goal is to make these workshops as beneficial for teachers in the area as possible. So have a great weekend and stay healthy.